Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you here for our fourth webinar where we go over some of our key findings for the global report on the state of investments of fruit and vegetables. Sowing a Colorful Revolution in Food Systems. We're really excited to cover this topic today on nutrition generally and driving consumer demand of fruits and vegetables. It's an incredibly important aspect of understanding nutrition and fruits and vegetables' role in it. Very often, as agriculture research for development actors, we spend a lot of time on the production and loss and waste side. But a huge part of figuring out how to make people healthy and fulfill their potential is this nutrition aspect and consumer demand part of the food system. And so we have amazing speakers. I'm Erin McGuire. I'm the Director of Responsible Innovations, who has been leading this study since its beginning with the University of California, Davis. And I have some wonderful colleagues that have been shepherding this report along as well, and I will have them introduce themselves. So Caroline, who's our senior nutrition strategist, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Erin. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're really excited to have you here today. This is more my area of expertise on the nutrition side of things, and I'm excited to be presenting the findings from the consumer demand side of fruits and vegetables. I recently finished my PhD at UC Davis in global nutrition, and as Erin mentioned, I've been helping finish this report with the team and then really helping to launch the nutrition side of things for responsible innovations. And also, as a note of housekeeping, I just wanted to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded, so just a bit of an FYI. And please do feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go through the webinar. We will answer them throughout as we're able, but then we'll also circle back for Q&A at the very end of the webinar. It's scheduled for about an hour and a half, but we usually are wrapping up around an hour and 15 minutes. So I will pass over to Archie for his introduction.
Thanks, Caroline. I am Archie Jarman. I used to work for the Horticulture Innovation Lab as the Associate Director, and before that with Arcadia Biosciences working on USAID projects, and have been part of putting this report together. And I'm very excited to be here and learning from the panelists about nutrition and this high priority topic that came out of the report. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Great, thank you. And can everyone see my screen all right?
We can, but it's not in presenter mode. It's like we can see your whole internet browser.
Interesting. Okay. Every time I go to share it, it says my screen is paused. My screen sharing is paused.
Oh, strange. I can also try sharing if that's helpful. I just have some notes in the slides that I'm not sure I'll be able to see. Oh, there we go. The RI logo is cut. Yeah, there. That's perfect.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone again. I am really excited to have our panelists with us as well. So today we will very briefly go through setting the stage for why fruits and vegetables are important from a nutrition perspective. And then we will quickly go over very high level report findings that will center us within the consumer demand and nutrition conversation. And then we'll let the panelists take it away. We have really excellent expertise on our panel. I'm also really excited to learn and be a part of a reflection on these findings. And then after the panel discussion, we will do a deeper dive into the report results because this is a part of a series. We don't want to give people the same results over and over, but really want to make sure those that are new to the study get the opportunity to learn more. So I will go over those results after our panel discussion and then give a little bit more on responsible innovations. Before I launch too much further, I just want to have shared deep gratitude for our partners in this study, which is IFPRI at CGIAR and the World Vegetable Center, as well as the University of Bonn, and about 200 experts globally who contributed to these findings. Okay, so when we're looking at food systems, we are 93% of food-based dietary guidelines are asking from our food systems that half of our plate be fruits and vegetables. When you look around the world, every government is asking this of their constituents. Yet we see very little actual consumption of fruits and vegetables, and we don't see a lot of investment in fruits and vegetables. Majority of investments is often going to other crops, which we'll talk a bit about. But it's important just to start the conversation, particularly today, in understanding that the global community has collectively recognized that half of our plate should be fruits and vegetables. However, there is a significant gap in consumption of fruits and vegetables. And not only are we seeing the demand for fruits and vegetables perhaps not be where it is, where we would like it to be, but there is not enough fruits and vegetables to go around for everyone to get their recommended intake. We know how incredibly important it is to have fruits and vegetables in order to live a productive lifestyle. Yet, we can see here the recommended intake in the blue, and for 400 grams a day globally, yet world production is below that. And these numbers, it's important to note, include roughage. So this isn't even just the edible part of the plant. It is the whole plant. So we are significantly below globally what it would take for everyone to be able to eat fruits and vegetables as recommended. And we know that fruits and vegetables is an equity issue. So globally, it's high income countries and high income people within those countries that have access to fruits and vegetables and are purchasing fruits and vegetables. They're usually higher value commodities, they're more expensive. And you can see here that within global regions, there's a difference, a gradient in who's getting access and eating fruits and vegetables. And here, Central, Eastern, Southern, and Western sub-Saharan Africa is well below comparatively to other regions in eating fruits and vegetables. So we really took issue with this at the Horticulture Innovation Lab, the Feed the Future Innovation Lab, when we started this study. It's been now ongoing for 3 years, and we were able to launch it just in the nick of time with some extra funding from IFPRI. The current state of understanding whether or not we are putting our money where we want our consumers to be eating is really sparse. We don't have the ability globally to understand what kinds of investments are being put into fruits and vegetables. And we know from the literature that any money that is going to fruits and vegetables is often going to high export markets. So this study really set out in a very unique way using Q method and Delphi methodology to essentially take qualitative data from 9 different countries and 200 different experts and start to make some quantitative guesses on what our investments are in fruits and vegetables. And we also globally do not have these data disaggregated by sector. So this study disaggregated investments by NGOs, academia, private sector, and larger bilateral organizations. So we feel really lucky to be able to have these results. And one of the most important findings was around what are the investments looking like. So the overall objective of the study was to understand the landscape of global horticulture R&D, to identify the challenges facing horticulture investments and opportunity areas for investments. So we really want to be able to say immediately, okay, if there's not enough investments in fruits and vegetables, what is happening as a result of it? And how can we immediately work to invest now to make a big difference in the fruit and vegetable value chains? And we want to describe the factors influencing accessibility and disparities across regions. We really look at this as an equity issue. And through this study, we wanted to build local partnerships and strengthen research implementation. So like I said, it was a huge effort between all of these countries listed here. And through these data collection methods, we were really able to build a huge network of those working in this space that are now able to take these results and use them and apply them, whether it's within their national agriculture research systems, within their ministries of agriculture, or advocating for different types of programs through NGOs and other development agencies that they work with. So finally, as a little bit of a cliffhanger to the study results that I will present after our panel today. We found that 10% of investments overall globally, it looks like, are going into fruits and vegetables, and about another 10% local consumption of fruits and vegetables, and another 10% is going into export-oriented crops. And then for about 9 different crops that make up staple crops, we see 80 to 90% of investments going into those crops. So hugely different than what we're actually asking of people from these food-based dietary guidelines. And so we asked experts, what are the major things that we need to work on as a community in order to change this? And 5 major themes emerged. And you can find all of these webinars. These all were turned into webinars on our website. The 5 major areas were around post-harvest loss and building value chains, enhancing extension through capacity building and digital innovation, and strengthening seed systems and research infrastructure. Today, we'll talk about elevating nutrition and consumer demand for fruits and vegetables. And lastly, next week, we'll talk about enabling market access for women through policy instruments. And so we really wanted to highlight in this webinar series people who are doing this right now and start to generate conversations on where investments can go immediately. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague to go over some more specific results within consumer demand and nutrition. And the report itself does a much deeper dive, not only on the aggregate global level, but also within each country that we looked at.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Erin.
Erin. Oh,
Oops.
sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Sorry, Archie. I'll have you do the global findings after the panel, if that's okay.
Perfect, no problem.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to dive briefly into the specific findings that we have on consumer demand for fruits and vegetables and nutrition. So overall, we found that there were several key drivers of low fruit and vegetable consumption, and experts identified a range of interconnected drivers, including first and foremost affordability. So that was the dominant constraint that we identified, with about 75% of experts citing it. They noted that high fruit and vegetable prices, in particular relative to staple crops, made fruits and vegetables largely inaccessible to many low-income households. And consumers with limited purchasing power were reported to prioritize cheaper, more calorie-dense foods such as grains and pulses, which offer greater satiety at a lower cost. And then in terms of awareness, we found that almost half of experts, 45% of them, cited limited awareness of the health benefits of fruits and vegetables, which was often attributed to poor nutrition education, especially in rural areas. And then 35% of experts reported that cultural norms and availability shaped consumer preferences. For example, traditional diets tended to favor staple crops over fruits and vegetables, while weak supply chains, high post-harvest losses, and a lack of product diversity in the local markets contributed to limited availability. And finally, seasonality and perishability were key concerns. About 14% of experts cited seasonal fluctuations. So oftentimes we see these lean seasons, which make it difficult to access fruits and vegetables, and also drives up the prices. And then 12% of experts noted that perishability limited household demand, especially in settings without reliable refrigeration or regular market access. So then when we go to look at which are the groups with limited access and awareness, oh yeah, no problem. Erin, next slide, please. Thanks. So we find that the different factors or the different groups with less access and awareness of fruits and vegetables largely overlap, including low income, rural and both rural and urban, and marginalized groups, which often include children, women, indigenous groups, and the elderly. And these factors are consistent with the groups reported to have limited access and awareness of their benefits. So, like I said, we know that children, women, elderly, and marginalized groups often cross-cut some of these other categories, like being low income, less educated, and living in either rural or urban areas. But it's clear from experts' responses that women are not always top of mind when it comes to accessing fruits and vegetables or being aware of their benefits. So this is one of our primary focus at Responsible Innovations, is ensuring gender equity and gender access to healthy, nutritious foods. Next slide, please. And then Archie will dive a bit into these factors later on, but I just wanted to touch on some of the implications of limited investments in fruits and vegetables. So about 41% of experts cited malnutrition and food insecurity, particularly relating to low dietary diversity and low consumption of fruits and vegetables. A quarter of our experts noted that rising fruit and vegetable prices often reduces access for low-income populations. And so without adequate investment, it's much more difficult for these populations to access year-round fruit and vegetables. And then nearly half of experts cited longer-term risks, including a higher dependence on ultra-processed foods, which we know is increasingly a problem in the double burden of malnutrition, limited dietary diversity, which exacerbates micronutrient deficiencies, and other poor nutritional outcomes like stunting and wasting. Next slide, please. So this leaves several opportunities for investment in fruits and vegetables, including school feeding programs, public health programs, and other social protection programs. These different programs that can be implemented can help us to shift consumption patterns and to better support smallholder farmers. And they also sustain incentives for diverse local and indigenous fruits and vegetables. Through these different types of programs, it can help us to ensure off-season availability through protected cultivation of various fruits and vegetables, crop diversification, which can improve resilience and micronutrient content of the food supply, and staggered planting. And then finally, through improved market linkages, we can ensure better availability and affordability of these foods. And then finally, we have several mechanisms in which investing in fruits and vegetable production, particularly through increased consumer demand, can provide returns on investment. So for one, it can improve affordability and availability of fruits and vegetables by stabilizing the food supply and reducing the relative cost compared to some of our staple crops. And in turn, that improved affordability and availability enables higher consumption, which we know contributes to improved dietary diversity and better micronutrient adequacy. Then, as I mentioned previously, we can achieve some of these aims by including fruits and vegetables in school meal programs, small-scale production, and educational or other social behavior change interventions. Taken all together, the World Bank Investment Framework for Nutrition in 2024 estimated that scaling up nutrition interventions yields an astonishing $23 return for every $1 invested in fruits and vegetables when accounting for productivity, health, and economic outcomes. So there's really no reason why these types of crops should not be invested in, but we'll talk about trade-offs in a future session. So we know that there's high returns on investment, but of course that comes with requirements for attention to equity um, and yield factors compared to staple crops. So with that, I will wrap up our findings on fruits and vegetable consumer demand, and we will shift over to our panel discussion. So we have three panelists joining us today, and we're really excited to have each of them. I will do quick introductions. And Aaron, if you don't mind going to the next slide, then we can have a quick overview of our panelists. So first we have Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa. I hope I pronounced that right. She is a fellow of the International Union of Nutrition Sciences, and she's been conferred as a career scientist and immediate past director of Department of Science and Technology's Food and Nutrition Research Institute. She currently serves as a board member of the Professional Regulations Commission for Nutrition and Dietetics. Throughout her career as a scientist, she managed and led multiple national nutrition surveys, which provide crucial data for informing laws and policies. Her leadership in various research projects has led to significant outcomes, many of which have been translated into actionable legislations and laws. And the manuals she developed are utilized by both hospitals and universities, and her extensive research has been published in several peer-reviewed journals. She earned her master's in nutrition and her PhD in community nutrition from the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education for Tropical Medicine at the Regional Center for Community Nutrition at the University of Indonesia. For the furtherance of her scientific productivity, currently she's engaged in research projects with a private agency, continuing her advocacy that proper nutrition is a vital economic and social issue. Next, we have Dr. Eva Monterosa, who's a nutritionist and scientist with 2 decades of research and professional experience in maternal and child nutrition. Her approach integrates scientific inquiry, principles, and professional ethical practices to develop innovations across public health and market sectors. With her expertise in formative research, project design and planning, monitoring and evaluation, and demand creation, Dr. Monterosa currently serves as program lead for consumer demand generation at GAIN. And in this role, she designs programs for better consumer dietary choices in market delivery models. Dr. Monterosa is a founding member of both the Society for Implementation Science and Nutrition and co-founder of the Food Culture Alliance. She holds a bachelor's degree in nutrition and food science and a master's in science in human nutrition and metabolism from the University of Alberta, Canada, and a PhD in nutrition from Cornell University. And last but not least, we have Dr. Ahmed Kablan, Executive President of Weiss Consulting Collective, a global leader in nutrition, food systems, and sustainable development with over 23 years of experience across academia, government, and international development. He has advanced research at the NIH, shaped global strategies on food, health, and policy, and taught public health and biotechnology at the University of Jordan. Recognized for building cross-sector partnerships, Dr. Kablan bridges evidence with practice to deliver transformative solutions. Through his work at Weiss, he advances strategic advisory services to strengthen food systems, improve nutrition and food safety, and champion responsible innovation in agri-food systems to achieve the SDGs. Thank you all so much for being with us. And if you are able to, please feel free to come on video and say a quick hi, and then we'll get going with some of the panel questions.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to having a great conversation with Dr. Kablan and Dr. Imelda.
Great,
Yeah,
thanks,
hello,
Eva.
good evening from the Philippines. Good evening. So I think it's your morning there, Eva and Ahmed. So nice to be here and to share with you our insights about fruit and vegetables consumption as well as in research and development.
Great, thanks,
Hi,
Imelda.
everyone.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak in this webinar, and good to see some familiar faces and friends. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, everyone. Again, yeah, those of you who are on various time zones, we're glad you could join us at all hours of the day and evening. I just want to kick things off with our panel conversation. So my first question for each of you, and feel free to just come off mute. Maybe we'll go in the order shown on the slide here to start the first question. So from all of your perspectives, what would you say were the two most important findings from this report with respect to elevating consumer demand for fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, okay. So let me be the first. So the two most important findings of the report is, of course, there's a glaring result on low investment in fruit and vegetables research and development. Across sectors, investments in fruits and vegetables research and development remained limited and resulting in fewer evidence-based insights or evidence-based data where this could actually serve to guide policies and laws that promote sustainable production. Second is most countries actually have bias on towards export crops, no? Like our country. So many countries prioritize high value fruits and vegetables for exports and leaving domestic populations with reduced access to these products for local consumption to improve nutrition. I think that's good for me.
Great,
Thanks,
thanks, Imelda.
Imelda.
Yeah, feel free to go, Eva.
I guess for me, the main findings that I want to highlight was the affordability challenge, especially among low-income people. And when low-income families don't have a lot of money, they have to make some tough decisions. And vegetables have to compete against some important criteria compared to staple foods, right? They've got to compete on satiety and energy, which is kind of hard, and volume, because you have to buy a lot of vegetables. And when you cook them, they cook down rather than expanding, which often happens with like legumes and staples. So these are tough challenges, but they can be addressed. And I think the second striking finding for me was, in fact, the cultural piece that was highlighted by the experts when they talked about fruit and vegetable consumption being tied to cultural or cuisines. And so for me, that highlights a key area of preferences and use of vegetables in today's cuisine, wherever you happen to be living. And to unlock demand, I think we need to really focus on that aspect of preferences and taste. Over.
Thank you, and we'll go next. I think one point which is I found it struck me in the report, which I shared with Eva, it is the affordability part. Household campaign, education campaign, which is a common intervention in public health, behavior change campaigns to promote the increased consumption of fruit and vegetables and nutritious diet. But these campaigns are not enough if consumer cannot afford the food product that we are promoting. So if we don't get at the affordability piece, and affordability is a very complex topic in terms of what determine affordability and the purchase power, it takes by itself if we want to talk about a whole 3-4 hour webinar. The second piece, which is linked to affordability in my mind, it is the post-harvest losses and food waste. From the supply chain, the post-harvest losses driving up cost. When a farmer producer invests X number of dollars in producing X tons of food, and we are wasting on average 45+%, and fruit and vegetables are perishables and highly this is subjected to high food loss and waste, that lead to increased prices and make affordability make it an issue. Examples from the report is striking and not surprising. 40% fruit and vegetables in the Philippines lost to post-harvest losses, not to mention bring the food waste component from consumer. The same goes in Ghana and Guatemala. investment also is skewed toward export crops, such as pineapple, mango, and snowy, etc. Yes, that's important to generate income and to increase GDP, but also we don't want to forget about local consumption and the important investment of crops that are consumed in the local market. So we want to have that, ensure that increased income spillover is equitable at the other side for the lower income segment of the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. Yes, I think you make a great point, Ahmed, especially about the post-harvest losses. I was recently at the International Congress of Nutrition conference in Paris about 2 weeks ago, and it was really interesting. One of the presentations was about a different way to transport tomatoes to market, and they significantly decreased the amount of post-harvest losses. And then, of course, that seller doesn't need to have their prices as high to reap the same return on investment. So I think these challenges are really interlocked, and I think we kind of have to address multiple things at the same time in order to improve affordability. So thank you so much for all of your comments on that. So my next question to each of you, and maybe we'll go in the reverse direction on this question, is what would you say are 1 to 2 examples of high impact strategies that you and or your organizations are advancing that have proven effective in actually shifting diets towards more fruits and vegetables? And relatedly, why do you think governments and donors should prioritize investments in these approaches? So maybe about 5 or 6 minutes each for this question. Feel free to share some of your experiences and dive a little bit more in depth.
I think I will start here. Thank you for this question. It's very important. And I think um, part of that question is linked to the first question, which is if in terms of strategy, how we can bring prices down, make fruit and vegetables more available and affordable in a safe produce. And I think the first strategy I would think about is a zero food waste and circular bioeconomy approaches. And I will give an example from our new startup at Wise. We are a young startup, but we are still committed to zero food waste. Protocols across all event and partner programs that we partner with or we support. And we offer this service in terms of how can we achieve a zero food waste as a free service. So we are not charging for that unless the proposal we are working on is a food loss and waste reduction. This is more than symbolic. It reduces avoidable losses and it creates stream of organic feedstock, for example, that can be valorized into compost by fertilizers, animal feed, biomaterials, and clean energy. All of those things by diverting food from landfill into either human consumption and or animal feed and generating a circular system that is efficient. And that is more about also supporting or achieving the triple wins. By doing this, we are getting at the core of generating businesses from economic side, environmental win, reducing methane from food not being wasted and rotting in the field, emitting methane. And also we are supporting communities by making food more nutritious and or increasing income to afford food purchases of nutritious food product like fruit and vegetables. Why government and donors should care about this approach? Circular valorization create jobs and beneficiaries. It benefit in new industries in low-income communities. The majority of beneficiaries that are coming from the the marginalized group, women and youth. Those are usually they are looked at them as the trash picker or the living on near to dump site. But also we are strengthening rural value chains. We are improving soil health through nutrient recycling and regenerative agriculture. This is climate smart, nutrient smart, and economically smart approaches that we are looking at. The World Bank, as you mentioned in your report, showed every dollar invested return on investment in nutritious crops and fruit and vegetables 23. The WRI report in terms of food loss and waste and circular economy reduction report showed that for every dollar invested from private sector, the return on investment is $14. That is a smart investment. The second strategy is value chain hotspot assessment and target post-harvest harvest loss investment. In this case, we want to look at food loss and waste. Where are the hotspots that happen through the value chain? And that requires to be country specific, value chain specific, and location or geography specific. For example, the World Bank work that's led by Gita Sethi showed that where losses happen throughout the value chain. For example, in they showed that by cutting food loss and waste in Nigeria by 50% at the transport and storage stage, the consumer prices of tomato will come down by 20%. The same value chain tomatoes in Rwanda, the price will drop by 23% if we are reducing food losses at the farm and retail level, not at the transport and as in the case in Nigeria. Why government should care about this? This is important that we are investing in the right node, especially where resources are constrained. We don't have unlimited resources to invest everywhere. We need to direct and target our investment to where it matters most. Cold chain, backing house, aggregation hubs. It's very important to think about these nodes where we need to invest in it for a measurable improvement and affordability access. From my own experience, for example, at USAID, as you recall, Aaron, we were working together on several things, and they established a food loss and waste initiative. Start from the zero to a $15 million investment, and I leveraged a new partnership model with public-private sector partnership. For every dollar invested from USAID, we secured $1 from private sector. But that showed that circular bioeconomy to tackle food loss and waste are profitable. They are triple win for social, environmental, and economic gains. And that approach, what I also trying to establish and build at WISE right now, and looking for a partnership to support this kind of work. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ahmed. Yeah, feel free to chime in, Eva. I'll comment after everyone's responded.
Yes, so I think for me, when I also mentioned at the beginning, one of the challenges that I see for consumer demand is shaping preferences and tastes and uses of vegetables, in the modern cuisine. So one way to address that preference challenge is using brands. And that's the work that we've been doing at Gain. And the brand strategy that we have in markets is important because it connects the retail side of things with the consumer side of things. So, and the consumer meaning how they purchase, but also what they eat and how they eat. And our brand has been developed precisely for unpackaged nutritious foods sold as commodities. So vegetables being one of those commodities. And the brand we've developed is focused on lower income consumers. So we also focus on vegetables that are widely available and relatively affordable. Okay, we're not going with, high-end foods being sold at high-end retail. This is what's happening in informal sales. And the name of our brand is called Fit Food, and we are active in Kenya and Uganda. Why are brands a good strategy? Essentially, there are two pathways of impact that brands have. The first one is a mental pathway, and the second one is a physical pathway. So the mental pathway refers essentially to the awareness that people have when they see the brand, its memorability, and then its associations of the brand asset. Most people identify a brand through its visual identity, but there might be some audio identity related to that, let's say a jingle, the brand's key messages, and then just the overall experience at retail. All of these things connected make the consumer remember, oh, I want to have more vegetables, or I need to eat more vegetables, right? So the brand connects those parts of the brand elements to the needs of the consumers. And in our case, we've worked with mothers to really understand, and that's something you mentioned earlier, Caroline, that a lot of the needs of women aren't being considered. In our case, that's our main core and focal point of main audience is our mothers. And they have a very particular need every day. Every mother who's going to listen, who's listening here knows that. The job is to make a nutritious meal that everyone will eat and enjoy every single day, at least once, if not more than once, right? And that's a tough job. And you have tough customers, which is normally your family, who will tell you if they like something or don't like something, right? Either by protesting and telling you or just not enjoying it, right? And so we really connected with that need that mothers have and how the brand helps and supports them through that process. So that's the mental availability. the mental pathway. The second pathway is this idea of physical availability, in that the more places that the brand is available, the more likely people are going to buy it, right? And if more people are going to buy it, it's more likely that retailers are going to stock it. And so by seeing the brand also, it has a nudging effect. And I'm sure most people are familiar with nudges. So why should governments care about, or donors care about, investing in preference formation? Well, the challenge that we have with vegetables and other nutritious foods like legumes, fruits kind of sits in a different category, but vegetables, seeds, legumes, is that income elasticities for these products are low. What does that mean? That as incomes rise, as people gain more income, they eat less vegetables or the consumption flatlines. So unless you invest in preferences for vegetables, so people want to have vegetables, even if we cut prices and make them more accessible and affordable, it's not going to necessarily lead to increase in consumption all that much. So all of this has to happen in conjunction with making them more available and more affordable. So that's one thing that we're doing. And quickly, the other part that we're working on, so that's the brand part is happening in the marketplaces, mostly in the urban areas. But you still have the rural population. You've got farmers who are growing the vegetables, but you also want them to eat those vegetables, right? And so together with our partners, East-West Seeds, who are investing quite heavily in vegetable farming as a livelihood in sub-Saharan Africa, GAIN is partnering with East-West Seeds, and our role as GAIN is to develop like a nutrition education component for farmers. And we're trialing this out in Kebbi State in Nigeria. And now this is a tough challenge we've taken on, because you're actually asking farmers to grow this stuff as a livelihood strategy. So there's, market access component, but then you're asking them to keep some of that product that's going to generate cash for them to actually eat it. I don't know necessarily that we've definitely figured this out, but we're going to give it a good try. And we have our educational modules are focused on tangible benefits that people would get from having diets that are higher in fruits and vegetables. So the three tangible benefits we're working on is hydration. A lot of vegetables have water, and water is also scarce in some parts. Fiber, and basically the strength to fight illness, with a lot of like the immunity vitamins found in many of the vegetables being promoted. So that's the other thing that we're working on, and that's in this farmer space in rural areas.
Great, thanks so much, Eva. I have a follow-up question on that, but I'll wait until Dr. Imelda responds and then I'll circle back.
Yes, thank you so much. So let me share with you the high impact strategies that we are doing here in the Philippines. First is the school and community gardens, complemented with our fresh initiative. We are so lucky because we were one of the target areas of or target country of the fresh initiative. The fresh initiative, or the fruit and vegetable for sustainable healthy diet initiatives, was launched in the Philippines in May 2023. This has actually brought together CGIR, the FNRI, DOST, the IIRR, the academe, and others like the Department of Education, who are actually the consumers, and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, to promote sustainable diets by increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, especially among children. No? While we were supporting so well on biodiversity and empowering farmers and communities to really actually put more emphasis on the production of fruits and vegetables through intensive collaboration and trainings at the local government units. These activities were actually has paved the way of raising the bar of awareness on the importance of fruits and vegetables and human health and nutrition. And another important activity that we're doing here is actually connecting the school feeding programs that are actually that uses actually the vegetables coming from school gardens. So including the conservation and distribution of our indigenous vegetable varieties. This is actually to conserve more of our indigenous vegetables and actually to train the taste of these vegetables for to children. Now, example of actually trying to preserve the seeds is the establishment of our school crop museums and the seed distributions of indigenous vegetables that are currently implemented now based on our previous efforts on the efficacy of having community and school gardens, trying to actually present to them our evidence-based data on the importance of consuming fruits and vegetables in schools and in the Department of Social Welfare and Development has really paved the way of increasing the consumption of fruits and vegetables. Safe and sustainable good agricultural practices have been piloted for crops like eggplant, bitter gourd, and yard-long beans in our FRESH project. These efforts have boosted productivity and profitability among farmers. And why do donors prioritize this? Well, of course, no, it's a given fact that integrating fruits and vegetables into students' daily meals actually nurtures lifelong healthy eating habits, leading to improved health and nutrition outcomes that in turn will contribute to our long-term economic gains because they will be actually having or minimizing expenses for the treatment of diseases or illnesses. Over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much. Gosh, we've touched on everything from hydration to biodiversity and composting, and it seems like there are, interventions all over the map, which is great to really have these multi-pronged approaches to improve consumer demand through various routes. Dr. Monterosa had a really quick question about the brand that you mentioned. It sounds like an interesting intervention, and I'm curious, like, are these like stickers that are put on to fruits and vegetables, or do the fruits and vegetables then become essentially like packaged in some way? Can you comment a little bit on how that gets executed?
Yeah, sure. So no, we don't do packaging. The whole point is not to convert these into packaged or processed commodities, so keep them fresh. What we do is we brand the vendor. The last mile vendor
Oh,
gets branded with our, well, it has a logo. So they get they get a couple of things. So they'll get an apron. They get a plastic that they can put on top of their wooden crates, which allows to keep the surface cleaner. So again, trying to emphasize a bit more of a good handling practices at point of sale. And then some of them get crates, but if not, they have again their own wooden crates, which we emphasize the sorting of the vegetables and keeping a few things separate. And so they're visibly different from the other retailers who don't participate in our brand. And then we do a lot of marketing to drive people to those retailers who are doing the Fit Food brand.
Gotcha. Great. Well, thanks for clarifying. So I will just shift over to our last question. So maybe we'll go in the order of the first question, starting with Imelda and then Eva and then Ahmed. The last question for the panelists is, affordability was often cited as a leading barrier to fruit and vegetable consumption, and we've touched on this a few times now, but how can we design the demand generation strategies that do address these price and access challenges? And again, I know some of you have already touched on this, but the other thing I want to introduce to this question, I know that you weren't prepped for this, but we often talk about ultra-processed foods and how there's all these demands on people's time and improving convenience of these types of foods. Do you have any thoughts about how to also improve the convenience of these foods and making sure that mothers can access them without having to stand over the stove for 3 hours to prepare a healthy meal? And particularly with an emphasis on low income and rural communities. So I'll turn it over to Imelda first.
Yeah, thank you so much. Affordability is indeed a critical barrier, no, to fruit and vegetable consumption, especially in low income and rural communities. Now, demand generation strategies must therefore go hand in hand with interventions that lower prices and improve access. This may actually include, well, apart from our widespread implementation of school and community-based gardening for feeding programs, I think what is also needed is linking our small holder farmers to institutional markets. Now, structure the procurement from schools, hospitals, and government feeding programs ensures a reliable market for farmers while lowering the cost for consumers through reduced middlemen. In the Philippines, we have actually the Kadiwa centers, or what we call rolling stores, where government supported retail outlets in the Philippines established to provide affordable basic goods. Like for example, the fresh greens from their farms direct to the Kadiwa centers for accessibility of more people. Particularly also our fresh fruits directly from farmers and producers to consumers. That's actually reducing the channels of food distribution in the food chain. Another is providing subsidies and vouchers to our vulnerable groups. The Department of Social Welfare and Development actually distributes a bit card wherein our communities, our poorest of the poor can actually have access of that, and targeted financial support or voucher schemes can make fruits and vegetables more affordable for low-income households while encouraging regular consumption. Now, we also have invested some agencies like the Department of Science and Technology has also invested in supply chains and cold storage, reducing post-harvest losses and transport costs that can significantly lower retail prices in rural and expand access to fresh produce. Of course, by combining behavior change through our intensive campaigns with measures that directly improve affordability and access, governments and donors can create sustainable shifts in diets towards high fruit and vegetable consumption, making our healthier choices the easier and more affordable one. This is actually also to prevent access to some of our ultra-processed foods. Actually, doing the rolling stores, giving vouchers, and etc. Our intensive campaign. Over to you. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Melda. I mean, I fully agree with what Dr. Melda suggested. I don't know how much more I can add on that. So again, just to recap, there's a lot happening at retail. They're doing some campaigning work, and vouchers are being used to improve affordability. I think just even thinking about how to design these, I think it's important also to do and use the formative research to understand what the price and access challenges look like. They're going to be different everywhere. And there are a lot of affordable vegetables out there. And those are the ones we should be promoting over others that are less affordable. So trying to find out which are the most affordable, available vegetables, and starting there, I think is an important point that addresses the challenges that consumers face. On the access challenge, again, drawing from what Dr. Melda said, people are buying food every day in most places. I mean, I think the US is the only place where people buy on a weekly basis because they have like massive refrigerators, but most people in other parts of the world buy food either every or every couple of days, just because we can't stock that much in our homes. And so, study those purchase habits, ask consumers, where do they like to buy their food, and design services, or better yet, co-design the services with them, and bring in the retailers, as Dr. Amelda has done in the Philippines. In many parts of Africa and Asia, there's good availability already of fruits and vegetables, albeit seasonally. And so how do you, build on that availability and affordability, especially during high peaks, because these foods do become quite affordable at that point. Retailers and markets become the allies here. I think in the rural communities, Again, I don't do a lot of work in rural communities. We have an example. I gave an example from Nigeria, but I think there has been quite a bit of work done again in the global north about thinking about local economies and local food systems and doing joint community food assessments, joint planning for community supported agriculture, where community members agree to buy the vegetables grown by other members in their rural communities. And in many parts of the world, exploring the gifting and kinship network that exists. Not everything has to be a market-based transaction as well. And thinking of novel or interesting ideas on how to design village swaps if your village grows. So just being creative and thinking what has worked and trying to design these for and with the people in the communities that we're working with. Over to Ahmed.
Thank you. I could not agree more with both Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Montrose on what they mentioned. And I would say I will add maybe a little bit more. And as you might have guessed, food loss and waste will come into play here. I think the principle that we are looking at is very simple here. We are looking at how can we improve demand. So we want to bear demand with guaranteed affordable supply. Yes to awareness campaign, yes to nutrition education, yes to school feeding programs. All of this is very important, but we will be able to shift diets only if the household can afford and find the food which we are promoting, fruit and vegetables. So in order to achieve these things, we need to do a few things. We want to start first with identifying where food losses and waste happen at the beginning, or of the bulk of them. So that is more of hotspot assessment and mapping, similar to what the example I mentioned from the World Bank work, and they have piloted in several countries. We have partnered with them in late 2024 with the World Bank and AGRA and USAID. We have started a program to do multiple country hotspot mapping, but unfortunately that project, at least from the US government side support, ceased because of what happened to USAID. Once we identify this hotspot, we can direct investment to these investment nodes. The second thing, we need to invest in the right infrastructure. For example, as Dr. Manda mentioned, in the Philippines, you have a lot of food, post-harvest food waste, part of it related to cold chain, 40% losses. Improving cold chain will revert these things. And there is solution available in the market. For example, Cool Veg, they have a portable, low-cost food cold storage units that can be dismantled and assembled very quickly. In Ghana and Guatemala, again, in local investment in domestic crops need to be prioritized in order to stabilize supply. Other things, which is what Dr. Monterose talked with the brand name, which is looking at how can we also improve the handling, which look at the food safety aspect. Fruit and vegetables by nature, they are perishable, but also from our research that we funded, or from the research that I was leading at USAID and food safety in different parts of the world, different geographies, in Kenya or in Cambodia and others, we found food safety is the major problem in these perishable value chains. So if we support the producers and the vendors to build that brand and that name to supply safe food, we are building trust, especially with the local communities that are buying with them. And we know that unlike in large economies where you depend on the grocery stores, large retailers to guarantee that a blockchain safe food in order to make sure that when you walk to the grocery store, you're not worried about the safety of the product. But when you are buying food from the market, from the open air market or wet market as they called in Asia, you need to trust the vendor in order to be able to purchase it. So we need that trust to be established with the consumers and the vendors. The second or the third point to go to what Dr. Mada mentioned, the guaranteed demand, incorporating this production, fruit and vegetables, into also incorporating the demand side in the school feeding programs and social protection programs. We are creating a predictable market for farmers, for producers, and while we are also normalizing daily consumption for the household level. So we're bringing price down, but also we're creating or guaranteeing a market for the producers, so are not worried about producing today or producing in this season 20 tons or 10 tons and not having a market for them. And I saw it happening in several countries, for example, in Bangladesh, where eggplants and tomatoes were left unharvested in the market just because there is no market demand for them. Finally, we're looking at closing the loop with circular bioeconomy solution. Again, surplus food, inedible food, and Erin, as you mentioned, the global demand and supply are not balanced. And that look at the global supply for everything, which include the vegetable stocks, which include the peel of the fruit and vegetables, that including the weight. Those all of them end up, generally speaking, in landfill, creating a very rich environment for anaerobic fermentation and methane emission and worsening the environment and climate change, as we know that we need to look at climate, nutrition, ag food system nexus. But we are looking at that circular bioeconomy solution, we are looking to, for example, toward food bank to improve food access. We're looking at the inedible portion be composted or converted to feed or digested, anaerobically digested to create the methane from them could be used as a fuel for household. All of these things could be transformed into a useful product that will reduce methane emission, that will create jobs, and that will create a more equitable market, and the whole help support transforming the food system into a more equitable, resilient, sustainable food systems that we need to achieve ultimately where everyone have equitable access to the nutritious diet. And that is exactly what we are trying to advocate at WISE. We are advocating to pilot integrated models that combine all these elements: hotspot mapping, target infrastructure investment, guaranteed demand, circular solution, etc., all under a zero waste food waste protocol. As a startup, as you know, we are actively seeking this partnership and resources to test and scale these approaches where applicable. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much for your insights. In particular, I just want to underscore something that you said, Ahmed, which is about ensuring the more regular, the reliability of these outlets for producers to sell. That increases availability throughout the year. And then it also encourages women and youths to get involved in the agriculture sector, because we've seen that youths are tending to migrate out of ag because it's not reliable. It's not a regular source of income for them. So these issues are all so intertwined with one another that, we kind of have to target it from all angles. So it's great to hear that you all are doing that. There is one question I've seen come through in the chat that I'll throw out, and feel free, any of our panelists, feel free to respond to this with your experience. So someone had mentioned that in many low-income countries, governments tend to prioritize GDP growth and export-oriented agriculture over domestic nutrition. And this is what we saw also in our findings. But it creates this paradox where the economic gains might be higher, but then you have rising malnutrition within the country due to lower consumption domestically, and thereby increasing healthcare costs, reducing worker productivity, and undermining the more long-term development of the country. So are there any policy approaches which can help integrate fruits and vegetables into national nutrition agendas in a way that simultaneously supports economic growth, job creation, and improved public health? And then are there successful models where boosting local fruit and vegetable consumption has gone hand in hand with strengthening value chains, agro-processing, and trade? So I'll open the floor to any of our panelists who would like to chime in on that.
I will start. I think we hear from Dr. Mada what they have been doing in the Philippines in terms of bearing school feeding program with the production and the local farmers. And there's a lot of several examples that you could talk about them. Whether we're looking at the World Vegetable Research Center and their improved varieties, and looking at working at post-harvest loss and post-harvest loss and updating the whole breeding platforms. And part of that work was supported previously, and I was working with them on the post-harvest loss component back in the days, where they looked at releasing new varieties, improving seed systems and breeding platforms to looking at low-cost post-harvest loss technologies that are targeted toward smallholders, improving the production as well as reducing the losses at the field. The impact reporting document from the AVRDC, where they're looking at the benefit from varietal release for tomatoes and an African eggplant in Tanzania, for example. They increased the production that supported local consumption and market. That program was coupled with research and development on seed and varieties and extension to the market linkages. There's several other examples. I will pass it on to my co-panelists in case they would like to chime in on this one. Thank you.
Thanks. Amelda or Aoife, would either of you like to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I think Ahmed has already mentioned it, but then in addition to that, our efforts actually on the fresh, wherein we develop policy briefs for our legislators, is also one factor wherein we can actually convince our lawmakers to actually have a very scientific evidence-based law, wherein currently the brief has been developed and for dissemination. Now, prior to that, actually, prior to our fresh initiative, we already have laws that are actually integrating fruits and vegetable consumption to school feeding programs. And this law was actually developed way back in 2020, wherein we have encouraged our lawmakers to actually pass a law where students or our pupils will get a hot meal with fruits and vegetables. Sometimes because the price or the cost of our feeding program is too low, children can no longer actually, or the cost can no longer afford to get to get one piece of fruit for the meal, for the hot meal, no? So what they do is actually um, the savings coming from the school gardens for vegetables was actually allocated to buy fruit for the hot meal during lunch. So that's actually all the strategies that we can do in order to actually improve the consumption of fruits and vegetables in our country. So again, to prevent malnutrition, I agree. So we have to really raise the bar of awareness on the importance of fruits and vegetable consumption through our efforts on, presenting to our lawmakers scientific evidences so that they will be convinced. In the Philippines, they're so tricky. If you don't have any data, they always say, oh, what's your data and what's your evidence? Saying that such is really beneficial or very effective in improving malnutrition. So I think these are the things that we have to actually do a wide scale promotion on this kind of efforts. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Caroline, can
Yeah,
I comment
just
briefly? Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Erin, and I can add.
I'll just comment briefly. Yeah, thanks. Of course, agree. I just think that this question is really important because general investment in fruits and vegetables will yield very different results. And that's why it's important that we disaggregate between the types of value chains that we're investing in. And even high-end export markets versus in-country local markets, the way we are investing really matters. And very often we see that fruits and vegetables are crops that are under the control of women in local fruit and vegetable economies, especially the informal market. And as soon as we see increased investment to the point where fruits and vegetables are now sophisticated enough and making enough money, the ownership of that income switches hands and becomes in the hands of the husband. And so the way we are investing and the interventions that we utilize, I think really make a difference in the outcomes that we ultimately see. And that's why we have to be really smart and coordinated when we think about this new interest in fruits and vegetables, and that we're supporting the overall food system for equitable outcomes, not just putting more money into people who are likely to have more money.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Erin. I think I just wanted to comment on one thing. I know with vegetables exports, it's very tricky because, the kind of vegetables that are consumed in the terminal market, be it the global north market where the vegetables are going, are very different from the vegetables that are normally like the native varieties in a country, but not fruits. Fruits is an interesting one because fruits, usually the ones that are exported are the ones that you naturally produce more. And in the work that I've been doing, I have found that fruit consumption is actually a lot lower than vegetable consumption because vegetables figures in the cuisine, but many countries, not all, but a significant number of countries don't have a culture of consuming fruits. Fruits become gifts, very rare occasion things. And so, there's opportunities here to leverage the export markets and seeing as you strengthen those value chains, how can you also improve local demand and consumption? And because not all fruits that are suitable, not all the what is produced is suitable for export. So then you have a secondary market based on a grading of products that could allow for high quality goods, safely produced, and that have lower pesticides that could be suitable for a growing income class in the local market. So I think there's other ways of doing it, and it's really important, again, like Aaron says, like thinking about people who are most vulnerable. But also at the end of the day, you do have to develop a market, and markets are developed by people who do have some purchasing power. So you're going to have to distribute this across the board and using other strategies to protect the most vulnerable, as Dr. Imelda has shown in the Philippines through the vouchers and potentially cash transfer programs. Over.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Eva and Aaron. Thanks all for your comments on this question. I think we've really adequately answered it. So I want to leave a little bit of time left for reviewing the global results of our study and then talking briefly about responsible innovation. So Aaron, if you don't mind sharing the slides again, we'll conclude our panel and Q&A discussion. Although if any additional questions arise, do feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to follow up on them either in the chat or after the webinar. But thank you all again to our panelists. We really appreciate it. Big round of applause for them, either quietly on Zoom or feel free to come off mute. So, yep, I will turn it over to Archie to go over some of our global study reports or study results.
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, and thank you so much to the panelists. That's incredibly interesting. Here we will be presenting some high-level global results from the report. Again, there is a lot of great information in this report. If you want to find it on our website, the link has been put in the chat. And I will move on to the next slide. So one key finding, and this has been discussed by the panelists from this report, is that across the countries that were engaged in this workshop survey type exercise, about half of the fruit and vegetables investments were going towards highly developed export-oriented value chains, which was leaving only an average of 10.9% of agricultural crop-related research and development towards locally consumed fruits and vegetables. Which, again, this speaks to Aaron's comment about targeting investments and potential disparities, but also, Ava's comment in terms of chasing markets that have the funds that are there, that clearly the current influence is chasing, capital that might be there in order to support those markets. Next slide, please. So there are several barriers to horticulture investments. The top 6 are listed here that were cited by the experts in these workshops, with the 2 highest being fragmented markets, price volatility, and export market instability in the horticulture sector as a major significant barrier, and the second highest being the prioritization of staple crops and the perception of a limited return on investment for horticulture crops as being the top 1 and 2 most mentioned horticulture investment barriers by the experts that were part of this research study. Next slide, please. So there's some significant implications that were noted by the experts in the research of this limited investment in fruits and vegetables. The top being malnutrition and food insecurity, and this was identified by approximately close to half of the experts engaged in the research. And this is leading to low fruit and vegetable consumption, insufficient dietary diversity and quality, and increased dependence on ultra-processed food, which is definitely a concern in this discussion that we had with the panelists today. There's also components of reduced productivity. This was linked to also the market component of the horticulture sector, but if investments in fruits and vegetables do not increase, the productivity gains will not also similarly increase. So we need to make investments in this sector in order to meet the global demands and for fruit and vegetable consumption and for dietary diversity. Additionally, mentioned were reduced economic growth, decline in farmer participation and youth outmigration from agriculture, rising fruit and vegetable prices, growing import dependence, and persistent food loss and waste that was mentioned by Ahmed many times as a critical component of a limited investment in fruit and vegetables and the consequences of that. Next slide, please. From the key resort component of the global opinion groups, there's 2 significant opinion groups that had major consensus. That strengthen the technical and human capacity across the value chain is incredibly important. And this primarily came from academic and NGO stakeholders. They also mentioned investment in skills, inputs, and infrastructure to improve productivity and resilience in fruit and vegetable consumption. And local seed systems are key to innovation and adaptability. Amongst government and private sector stakeholders, a major consensus was also in the area of strengthening research capacity and integrating horticulture into national science and technology agendas, along with policy development and creating data systems in education as an essential sustained investment for the transformation in the horticulture sector. Next slide, please. And some of the experts, in terms of their insights for action points that emerge from the research, include prioritization of fruits and vegetables in national policies, establishing multi-sector platforms to coordinate policy and action across sectors, and to incentivize local governments and grassroots campaigns aligning with subnational budgets to support horticulture, fruit and vegetable markets, and infrastructure. Next slide, please. And now I believe I will turn it over to Erin, who will be presenting on the efforts of responsible innovations. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Archie and Caroline and our amazing panelists. I'll just highlight again from what I said earlier on this slide is that we're really looking for impactful actions from this research. So we think it is really important that we get out that there is extremely limited investment in fruits and vegetables, even though we want half of our plate to be fruits and vegetables. And if we're concerned about the sustainable development goals, a good portion of the people who have even more limited access, awareness, and can afford fruits and vegetables are low income. And so the researchers that engaged with this work have really taken it on themselves to continue to advocate for larger budgets for fruits and vegetables. And that was really echoed as needed within the panel. So yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about Responsible Innovations, who is helping to shepherd this study. Like I said, it started within the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Horticulture, University of California, Davis, and it continues to be in partnership with IFPRI and World Veg and many global universities. But we are really lucky to have a global network that supports responsible innovation and food systems work. So together, our network, our dynamic global network of agriculture and food systems researchers, practitioners, and innovators work at the intersection of research and real-world application. So again, applied research, really making sure that we're taking equitable innovation and able to scale it for food systems outcomes. So this is what the second bullet says. We at Responsible Innovations really work to equip organizations and businesses with the tools, knowledge, and partnerships they need to scale responsibly and inclusively. And we're committed to catalyzing evidence-based, community-centered solutions that ensure innovations genuinely serve the people they are designed for. And we do a lot of work to embolden our scientists, practitioners globally to engage in leadership and science in the areas in where they're working. So these are some of our services. We do food systems research. This is a great example of the work we're capable of doing with such a large network and with different types of expertise. So this interdisciplinary aspect of the systems research is very important to us. And then innovation packages and field trial management. We talked a lot about potential post-harvest innovation and the need for increased innovation to reduce food loss and waste. We have a lot of these innovations that are bundled for use in small scale farming situations. And then, of course, agroecological trials as well with our partner universities and scientists globally. We also do a lot of work in understanding how to innovate and scale innovation for impact in marginalized communities. So we have a verified tool that's been being used all over the world, Gender Up, that helps organizations and researchers do just that. And we also run quite a lot of workshops focusing on responsible innovation and scaling. If you want to become a responsible innovations expert, please join us. I think one of my colleagues can put a link into the chat, but we feature you on our website. We send out quarterly newsletters with updates, and we provide training. And I think the most important part of this network is that we believe that we're stronger together. So the idea that we can have more effective research, greater impact through interdisciplinary research, through connecting geographically siloed researchers and practitioners, and all working together to develop solutions. So please feel free to join us. And for those on the call, we have one more webinar that shares the results, the high-level results of this study. That'll be next week, Enabling Market Access for Women Through Policy Instruments. So we'll really be able to do a deep dive into gender and how do we develop those markets in equitable ways that was brought up today. So I want to thank everyone who joined us on this journey today. Please download the report, make use of it. We also have an advocacy toolkit that we created and disseminated to all of our researchers. But we're happy to share that with you as well in your own efforts to increase investments in fruits and vegetables. With that, Caroline, would you like to say any closing comments? I'll thank the panelists once again. It was really wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us, and our panelists were excellent. I really enjoyed engaging with you all and look forward to keeping an eye on your work in the future and hopefully collaborating together on RI projects in the future as well. So thanks again, everyone, and we will hopefully see you next week.